I'm Anaid Yerena from Urban Studies, and I'm here to talk to you today about low-income housing and green building, examining sustainability priorities in the low-income housing tax credit program, and I will be referring to it as LIHTC from now on. A little bit about myself. I am an architect and a planner. I am an expert in housing policies and the local advocacy work that organizations do to promote the creation of these policies. And I'm available on my email here on campus as well as via Facebook. Thanks, Lisa. So let's get started. Housing policies are generally thought of as trying to create decent and affordable housing for people in need. But there are additional social goals that programs like LIHTC might have, such as having energy efficient design standards. LIHTC has been around since '97, and it is the largest program designed to produce affordable rental housing for low-income households. The way it works is at the national level, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development gives states certain funds based on the amount of population they have. And then those states' agencies have a lot of agency or decision-making power over how they allocate those funds. The allocation happens through a competitive process at the state level. In order to decide how to allocate these funds, there is a process where developers apply for these tax credits following the rules that the agencies have set up. These proposals are then rank ordered, and the highest one wins the tax credits. These rules are defined in a qualified allocation plan, also called a QAP, which is drafted by the state housing agencies and changed annually. This provides the rules and the criteria that the developers need to use to get funding. Some reasons why state agencies may have energy efficient priorities is to reduce utility costs, because those are a part of your housing costs. The research question that my work seeks to answer are: to what extent is energy efficient design a priority in LIHTC, as well as what explains the variation in priorities across states? To do this, I gathered data through a content analysis of state qualified allocation plans and looking for their energy efficient design policies, and then used ordinary least square regression. The variables that I collected, here's an example from Washington State. Washington State has up to 22 categories or criteria, and an example of one is you can get up to 10 points for setting 20% of units for farm workers as part of your housing project. This is from the Qualified Allocation Plan in California, where you have 20 points for leveraging public funds in addition to the tax credits, and of course sustainable building methods, which gets you 5 points. Here's an example from South Dakota, where South Dakota requires or suggests that you can get up to 20 points for using the home energy rating system or Energy Star certification, but you cannot get points for doing both. Here's additional specific criteria for South Dakota. Says that if you have xeriscaping or specific conditions in the types of windows that you use, you get additional points, and up to 110 points for energy efficient design criteria. So here I want you to focus not on the entire graph, but just on the center. I will talk about the outliers in the next slide, where we have a variation from the lowest percentage points to energy efficient design from Washington to the highest, which is 22% of the potential points are related to energy efficient design in Tennessee. Thank you. Next slide. So the outliers, on the low end, we have Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Texas that give no priority or have no interest, give you no points for doing energy efficient design. To the high end, where we have Missouri, North Carolina, and Vermont, who make it a requirement. If you want to apply for this type of funding, you have to have a specific certification for your project. Thanks. Next slide. So to answer the second question, what explains the variation across states when it comes to deciding what priorities they set for LIHTC projects? I am using now the variables that I collected. The first variable that I mentioned earlier, where it was a ratio of policy preference from 0, where there was no mention or no requirement, all the way to 1, where it was a requirement, and then a variety of independent variables. Because I have limited cases, 50 to be exact, I could only make a limited selection of independent variables. The independent variables that I looked at were housing need, which I defined as median rent over median income of renters, residential electricity cost, average residential bill. That could potentially explain why agencies could prioritize energy efficiency, citizen support for environmental policies collected through the responses to 3 survey questions in a report for climate change in the American mind, as well as citizen political ideology with a variable collected by Barry. What I found was, of course, housing need, and I'll explain that in a minute, was the highest predictor, but citizen environmental attitudes came in second place with a strong influence on whether state agencies made LIHTC a priority. And so the way I wanted to conclude my talk is with this map that actually has the darker shaded states with the highest priority for energy efficient design, and the ones that are close to yellow with 0. But talking about how people's attitudes to our environmental issues matter at the state level. And that's why it's so important that in institutions such as UW-Tacoma, where we're helping to form and inform individuals' minds about issues such as energy efficient design, that we're doing important work to make sure that we have more policies like this. Thank you.